Hey folks, Seth here. As we watch cities burn, statues being torn down, and calls to defund the police, if you haven't already, it may be time to think about personal protection. Guns Etc. has 10,200 square feet of guns, ammo, safes, and a staff that will work with you to find the best firearm for your situation. So stop by their huge store in Mesa or click on gunsetcetera.com and have access to over $400 million in firearms and accessories. And if you like my monologues, please subscribe to 960 The Patriots YouTube channel. Welcome back and happy August 25th, 2020. We begin as our text with Thomas Jefferson in his second term writing, quote, "Nothing can now be believed which is seen in a newspaper. Truth itself becomes suspicious by being put into that polluted vehicle. The man who never looks into a newspaper is better informed than he who reads them, inasmuch as he who knows nothing is nearer to truth than he whose mind is filled with falsehoods and errors." Close quote. I'll just keep that in mind as I give you this morning's headline in our hometown newspaper, the Arizona Republic. In top of the fold, quote, "Trump and GOP cast dark warnings." Close quote. Thought it might be interesting to see the first day's coverage of the Democratic Convention a week ago from the Arizona Republic with their headline last Tuesday morning. Herewith, quote, "Dems put women in spotlight on day one." Got it? Trump and GOP cast dark warnings. Dems put women in spotlight on day one. Now, of course, the Arizona Republic could have used that self-same headline from a week ago today, replacing the word Democrats with Republicans. What, given the speeches by Kim Glasik, Kim Guilfoyle, Nikki Haley, Ronna McDaniel, Patricia McCloskey, Tanya Weinreich, and Amy Johnson. In fact, it would have even been more accurate today than last week. The Republican convention last night featuring 3 more women on their first night than the Democratic convention did on their first night. But we don't have a media or press that goes for accuracy. Lee Smith put it yesterday that we don't have a media that is biased or partisan. We have a media that is part and parcel of operations, Democratic Party operations. Just so. I almost wonder if the headline was written before the convention aired last night. For every speech I saw was not about dark warnings, but bright days, before, here, and ahead. As Nikki Haley concluded her speech saying, quote, "Where every girl and boy, every woman and man of every race and religion has the best shot, the best life. In this election, we must choose the only candidate who has and who will continue delivering on that vision. President Trump and Vice President Pence have my support, and America has our promise. We will build on that progress of our past and unlock the progress of our future. The future starts when the American people re-elect President Donald Trump. Thank you, good night, and may God bless America." Close quote. Yep, that's a dark warning, all right. Maybe they just don't know English at the Arizona Republic. But let's look at a couple other headlines, too, shall we? The Washington Post this morning, main headline, "GOP portrays Democrats as a menace." Exactly a week ago, Democrats focus attacks on Trump. One is a portrayal of a menace, the other is a focused attack. The New York Times this morning nominating Trump, Republicans rewrite his record. A week ago, Democrats begin virtual convention hailing Biden and denouncing Trump. You see, in both the Post and the Times, the Democrats were just being accurate and speaking the truth. The Republicans were engaged in biased and one-sided revisionism at their conventions. Well, the New York Times and the Washington Post would know how that works. What are the op-eds? Well, in the Washington Post, the lead op-eds are, quote, "A rotten way to start convention week," and "The 7 cultish moments at Trump's convention add up to one big lie." What a wonderful way to treat people like Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, Kim Glasik, and others. For you see what's going on here, right? There is nothing, zero, null set the Republicans could say or do that would garner a good headline or coverage. If they featured nothing but Black and Indian and Hispanic Americans, it would be a cover-up, a fraud, window dressing, or a big lie. If they didn't, it would be all about the America Republicans see and want. If the Republicans prostrated themselves, genuflected, and apologized for being conservative or Republican, it would be don't buy it or what took you so long, or after years of damage, ... If the Republicans levitated and disinterred Barry Goldwater, Ronald Reagan, and John McCain, the Republicans they tell us they now like, they might just write the same headlines they wrote about Goldwater, Reagan, and McCain when they were the nominees of their parties. Unstable, Third Reich, dunce, extremist, racist. Yep, go back and look. Plenty of articles about McCain being a racist. Indeed, John Lewis, the sainted congressman who was just buried, even called John McCain's campaign for president much like George Wallace's, and that John McCain stirred hate the same way George Wallace did. In short, there is nobody a Republican nominee that can nominate. There is nothing a Republican can say that, at the time, and when they are seeking political suasion and power, they won't get reduced to ridicule, slander, and charges of racism. When they die, that's different. Of course, they speak well of them in the press, but only for one point, to contrast them as saints of the party that once was to the devils who stalk the land temporibus. What then to do? The answer is nothing. The answer is what Ronald Reagan did. Appeal directly as possible to the American people by going around, over, and under the media. Note, however, one little game. When we do that, that becomes the angle of attack, as in tweets are dangerous or need to stop. The standards are more than doubled, and it is beyond hypocrisy and charlatanry. You see, the hypocrisy matters only when committed by the right. Jerry Falwell Jr. right now is involved in a crisis over an affair. The left does not critique the moral failing of the affair, but the hypocrisy, for that is what matters to them. Seemingly, to them, hypocrisy is important. Meanwhile, what do? We, conservatives, our side. Well, we get him to resign his position. We don't give him a slot at our convention, as others who've engaged in that and worse behavior get at the Democratic convention. We don't do all we can to keep him in power and place because he's good at what he does in his day job. We oust him. The hypocrisy in the media and in the Democratic Party, that does not matter. And frankly, it is so rampant, it almost seems like a vitiated and weakened complaint. When we engage the shoe on the other foot test, it saying something like, can you imagine if a Republican president had an affair in office and was credibly accused of rape? Or can you imagine if a Republican fundraiser and bundler ran a child sex ring? Or can you imagine if a Republican governor or senator wore a KKK hood? Or can you imagine if a Republican made sex a condition of a job? We rarely say those things anymore because it has no purchase or punch or poignance anymore. But the Democrats and journalists, for them, hypocrisy means something when they point out that speck in our eyes continually. What they miss is they don't need to. We deal with it because we take the moral sense of things seriously. They take the power seriously by any means necessary, including the avoidance of standards they expect and demand of everybody else. To wit, yesterday, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, said the president is a, quote, domestic enemy. Those were her words. She finished her news hit saying he was, quote, an enemy of the state. Her words again. That is, she is calling him a traitor, guilty of treason. When Donald Trump called the media an enemy of the people for ramping up the rhetoric of violence, he was lambasted. Nancy Pelosi specifically targets the president as more specifically a domestic enemy and enemy of the country, and she just continues to walk on sunshine. Well, okay, Nancy Pelosi does not stand alone. She has a lot of support in those portraying her point of view. They reside at NBC, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, because her political positions are shared there. Donald Trump, as Dr. Stockman said in Henrik Ibsen's play, An Enemy of the People, is, however, stronger. That was his great discovery, Dr. Stockman's in that play. Remember? What was the great discovery? That the strongest man in the world is he who stands most alone. That is us. We will stand alone without the help of the Post or Times or NBC Universal, because we, the one man or the party with the right on its side, is a majority where it matters. And where it matters is what many who heard Kim Klacik talk about. Where it matters is what many heard Tim Scott talk about. Tim Scott, funny thing. Yesterday, the New York Times made mention of him as the sole black Republican in the Senate. The sole black Republican in the Senate. That was their point. Okay, how many black Democrats are there in the Senate? The answer is 2. Historically, there have been only 10 black senators. 4 of the elected ones were Democrats. The majority of elected senators were Republicans. Speaking of Tim Scott, last night he said, quote, "Our family went from cotton to Congress in one lifetime, and that's why I believe the next American century can be better than the last." Dark times, aren't they? "There are millions of families like mine across this nation," he said, "full of potential seeking to live the American dream." Is that the casting of a dark warning, as the Arizona Republic headlined it this morning? Or, rather, is that the reality for so many in this country who get their history and news not from a filter or a revisionist Marxist screed, but rather reality and clear sight? Of course we know that answer. Thus Tim Scott, thus Kim Glasik, thus Nikki Haley, thus Ben Carson, thus more than it feels imperative to mention. Let us rest easy knowing this. Anyone who joins us in all sincerity, we welcome. Those who do not care for our cause, we don't expect to enter our ranks in any case. And let our republicanism, so focused and so dedicated, not be made fuzzy and futile by unthinking and stupid labels. Our Republican cause is to free our people and light the way for liberty throughout the world. Ours is a very human cause for very humane goals. This party, its good people, and its unquestionable devotion to freedom will not fulfill the purpose of this campaign which we launch here now until our cause has won the day, inspired the world, and shown the way to a tomorrow worthy of all our yesteryears. Those are the exact words, I quote, Barry Goldwater from his famous 1964 convention speech. The very speech at the very convention the mayor of San Francisco then said used Mein Kampf as its playbook. What no newspaper or magazine reported at the time was how often his opponent, Lyndon Johnson, used the N-word. That's okay. We can take it, just as we can take what we've always taken, quiet pride in the consistency of our morality and dedication to best virtues of our founding and republic. Democrats today can label and compare us to George Wallace all they want, as John Lewis did to John McCain, as Barack Obama did at John Lewis's funeral. What we will persist in pointing out are 2 inconvenient facts for those who don't revise or rewrite history. 1, George Wallace was not a Republican. And 2, the slavery and segregation whose legacies we still fight were given to us and fought for by the same party that still wishes and finds it convenient to exercise and maintain power on the bases that race is more important than personhood, that groups are more important than individuals, and that singular standards of morality are less important than immediate tools of expediency. I know where I'd rather be. I think you do too.